Are you ready?
You are listening to Netsupport Radio, the home of our award-winning school IT management solutions. Netsupport, all the elements for successful school IT management.
And welcome to today's Netsupport broadcast. It's great to have Al Kingsley and Mark Anderson here. Hi guys.
Hello there.
And today we're going to be looking at safeguarding and how safeguarding is evolving, some of the new changes that are coming through. Obviously, it's always an evolutionary area of the work that we all engage with, and that really does sort of fill teachers' time and teachers' lives in terms of that priority, in terms of keeping children safe. So let's look at how things have been moving on. So Al, looking at fresh approaches to safeguarding, obviously Netsupport has worked within the safeguarding arena now for 30 years, but bringing it right up to 2019. What kind of fresh approaches are you starting to look at now with some of the software that you're deploying?
It's such a broad topic, safeguarding, isn't it? I mean, it covers so many different strands. Netsupport sits as one part of the jigsaw puzzle, and I suppose the simplest explanation in one sentence is we provide the digital eyes and ears to empower those professionals in schools to make the right judgments about keeping young people safe. And that's one parallel that alongside the educating both teachers and children to be digital citizens and aware themselves. If we think about the journey in terms of technology supporting safeguarding, the starting point would be to stop somebody going to a website, controlling where you have access to and limiting risk and exposure. But of course the reality is knowledge and ability to go out there requires people to explore places and be potentially exposed to others, whether it's forums and resources and elsewhere. So the evolution really was to provide the concept of keyword filtering, which is something that we do within Netsupport DNA. And keyword filtering can be done lots of different ways, and the devil is absolutely in the detail. It starts with a conceptual list of all those potential phrases and terms that might indicate a child is at risk, and we work with people like the Internet Watch Foundation to access their keyword libraries. So, if somebody's asking in a forum for A/S/L, age, sex, location, potentially there's a conversation going there where someone's trying to get more information about a child that may or may not be appropriate. So the filtering looks for those phrases, and where the phrase matches, it will trigger an alert. And there's sensitivities around that, the nature of the phrase, and the phrases can range everything from that risk of online grooming from somebody, to radicalisation, thinking the prevent duty, to self-harm, suicide, body image, bullying being an important strand if we think about updates to Keeping Children Safe in Education Act. So all those different strands, it looks for those phrases, it triggers, and it makes the appropriate person aware. And there are different products that do that, and they, argumentally, they all do them to a certain point, and some do them better than others. We take the approach of using Neurolinguistics. The strand that we take is about looking not just for the word, but the context within the sentence. So identifying the relevance. It's particularly important because when people are talking online, they tend not to be grammatically accurate, and there are different phrases, so we also have to consider that. We also build alongside that the identification for our EAL students in schools. So thinking about new students that arrive in schools, whether it's from Poland or Spain or wherever, and identifying terms that might indicate bullying or searching for drugs or issues that they may have in terms of self-harm, settling within a new environment and so on. So that gives us that kind of broader eyes and ears. One of the challenges which counters that, and I totally respect, is the view that students' data is personal, and we don't want to be in a situation where Big Brother tools potentially indicate that a child is doing something inappropriate when perhaps they're not, and that fear about that personal data being shared and used by the wrong people. So the first thing, of course, is our data is all self-contained within the product, and it's the school and the school alone that has access to that information. But what we've done recently, we said actually, if we take the human factor, the eyes and ears, when you make a judgment about a child being at risk, there are actually quite a few variables that as a professional practitioner you would consider. You would consider who is the child. Are they a vulnerable child? Are they looked after? Are they someone that struggles with a peer group, so they're perhaps more receptive to finding friends online or being more naive in terms of developmentally? Where are they using the computer? Are they using it in a setting that's monitored, or is it an after-school club or library where there's less supervision? the time of day, and then the variables about actually the contextual intelligence is about what have they done before. You know, every child is likely to trigger a keyword at some point by accident or by inquisitiveness, but doesn't automatically indicate that the child's at risk. So the contextual intelligence is really about, you know, if this child searched for the word suicide once, and if we look at the detail, it was finding research statistics across the globe for suicide rates, then they were probably doing a project which is quite valid at school. If they've searched for the term suicide 7 times in the last 24 hours, then there would be a higher risk indicator that that's somebody who might be looking at it for the wrong reasons. You still want to trigger it. Again, it could still be a project. So providing that contextual intelligence and recognising, look, this is a child that we know is new to the school, hasn't integrated, doesn't have a friendship group, and now there's evidence of them talking online and providing more information that we'd be comfortable with, it should trigger the information to professionals. When a professional's then making a judgment call about whether it's something that they can act on within the school or whether they need to involve their local area designated officer or other resources, it's important that they have that context. So we provide, in effect, this child typed this was the sentence, this was the context, this was the time of day, this is on this PC at this location. If it's a serious keyword, here's a screenshot. So you've got the context of what website they're on, what discussions surrounded what they did. On a really serious keyword, they could have a video recording, so you can see the before and after that led up to that conversation. And then from that, professionals are in a much better place to make a judgment. You know, I have genuinely, from wearing my education hat working within schools and trusts, I have a real concern with the black and white approach to this keyword monitoring and safeguarding. The idea that a simple yes/no trigger of a word should automatically set the wheels in motion for something more significant. And of course, it also feeds into the realities of time and pressure and resources within schools. You know, this should be something that's coordinated by the designated safeguarding lead. Often in schools, the network manager is the one that's having to monitor because of capacity and resource. But if you have 1,000+ triggers a day on every random keyword that happens to match, you can't see the wood from the trees. There are some in there that will be triggered keywords that are entirely inappropriate, the false positives, and that's always going to happen. Hopefully, with the right solutions, there's less false positives. But alongside that, you've got the things that have less immediacy. You know, the children searching for information about drugs or certain terms. You need to interact with that and find out about that. But there's ones which are stuff that needs to be done today before that child goes home. That child that's talking about self-harm or a risk of suicide, that needs immediacy and intervention. So how do you spot them out of that cloud or that visibility of all of them? So what we do is we say, well, look, you can either from an intelligence point of view, and then using intelligence in a constructive sense, see a word cloud of all the keywords that are trending and being captured based on the whole school cohort or year group. So maybe, you know, we can see our year 10 girls, there's a lot more conversation about body image, and we've got some concerns because it's things about thigh gap and laxatives and other things that might trigger an assembly with a certain cohort of children. But we can flip from that word cloud of what's happening to one that's based around the risk index, and suddenly we see little Fred is the one that's in the centre with the highest risk index, and by clicking on that record we can see it's because he searched for these terms 20 times on these different resources, and there's evidence behind it, and clearly this is somebody who's vulnerable and is accessing information that requires professional support. So that does 2 things. Firstly, it makes the process for the professional to interpret and make the judgment call far easier, we hope. But it also allows the important things to be dealt with and the normal chatter that goes on within a school to be used in the broader concept of shaping assemblies and education without having to dive on those things. So what we do find is for a lot of schools that move to our solutions, you know, they have something in place, but in effect it's not being used. There's just too much noise, there's too many emails, they turn off the alerts, somebody checks it once a week, and we might be ticking a box. We might be looking at the requirements from Kingsley and saying, yes, we've got appropriate monitoring and filtering, but actually we're not using it effectively. No. So we've tried to make it both effective, and then we've also said, look, walking around a school, what technology does a teacher have with them? They might have their laptop with them, but actually if I walk around the corner and I see a child that's clearly having distress or an issue, wouldn't it be nice just to go to my smartphone and be able to search for that child and see if there's any concerns that child's raised previously? You know, little Billy flagged a concern 2 days ago that he was being bullied on Facebook, and somebody showed stuff, and I've got some context behind it. And that's the flip, really, which is one part of the proactive is what are children doing. The second part we also do alongside that, just to parallel it up, is to provide student voice. that children can report concerns. And that reported concern means the child can either textually, or they can capture a screenshot of, in that example, a Facebook thread where they're being bullied or inappropriate things are being said about them. And they can send that to a trusted member of staff. And it might be different member of staff depending on the nature of what they're dealing with, whether they have confidence. And that also includes, when they report a concern, access to a list of pre-approved resources. So we're thinking about statutory obligations, things like FGM and other topics where rightly schools will have posters in appropriate places, perhaps the toilets and other areas. Children can access that, Childline, Ask Frank for drug advice, all different ones where the school knows they are reputable places where older children can access support where they perhaps wouldn't be confident engaging from a school leader. And the lesson that's learnt time and time again is the way that you support and safeguard children is not to lock down your systems at school. If you do, all that happens is the problem goes somewhere else, but the child's no safer. Yeah. And what's better is to have the systems accessible for the young people and make informed decisions from that, where you can provide support. And it's about support. There's no punishment in this. It's about identifying where a child is vulnerable and assisting it. And so we've spent a lot of time on that technology, and we very much lead in that sector of providing that kind of seamless way of supporting staff efficiently.
And there's a couple of things that you've touched on there which really sort of resonated and stand out. One is just the sheer noise which can come through other tools in terms of the amount of reports that can come through, but also whenever there's a safeguarding case and again, ex-police hat on, you always look at the immediate response. What are the priority jobs that are really need to focus on today, now, this hour? So the fact that you're actually able to distill that down for the network managers or the DSLs to actually highlight the key ones that just need the focus straight away, and those that then can wait a little bit longer, that must be so reassuring for the people actually in the schools.
Like all these technologies, isn't it? Reassurance comes from confidence. The number of schools that will try the products and say, wow, I had no idea these kind of conversations were going on. And we have to be realistic, we're talking about, in many cases, in sexual young adults, conversations happen, and we have to distill the difference between conversations that may or may not be appropriate and risk, and find that bit. But ultimately, back to previous conversations we've had about whether it's finance data or whether it's curriculum progress data, intelligence allows those people who are trained as professionals to act upon it. Our job's not to act, is to provide credible information that lets that process flow. And I think in every light of what we look at in a school, if you have visibility of what's happening, you're in a much stronger position to evidence it. Absolutely, it's something that Ofsted very much focus on. We understand that, come for an Ofsted inspection, if you haven't got your single central register sorted, if you've got safeguarding issues as a primary school with your perimeter and access control, whatever it may be, then you're going to fail, full stop. And actually evidencing and meeting all of those criteria, age-appropriate filtering, do you have restrictions on certain sites? Can you, monitor and see what children are doing? Do they have the ability to report their concerns? Is there a central log and tracking of it? They're all things that you pull together, and that meets, the obligations. And in truth, it shouldn't be just about obligations. It's common sense. As a school leader, how do you keep your children safe? Well, you can't assume. You need to know. You need to know in the digital sense that you've taken all reasonable steps. And probably they're not that dissimilar to what a parent would do in a different way at home. They want to know where their child is, what time of day they're using it, whether they're supervised or not, and where they're going. So I can't claim to be the inventor of something fantastic in a rocket science sense. What Netsupport's trying to do is take the obvious, but deliver it in a way that actually it's both saves times and it accesses and gives focus.
Mark, just to bring you in, with your experience from being in the classroom, being in schools, both as a practitioner and now going in and supporting schools as well, what kind of reassurance do you think the teachers will actually get from that? To know that, okay, it might not be a child that's necessarily in their class that they have day-to-day contact with, but to use the example that Al mentioned, they see a child in the corridor who's in floods of tears, and it just gives them a little bit of context to have that conversation with that child, knowing perhaps what happened yesterday or the day before and some reports they may have made.
Well, context is king, isn't it? And data, the difference between data and information. Information is, so being there in the corridor with that child, having that information at your fingertips gives you that real context so you can go into that conversation with a bit more confidence. And sometimes, and I've had situations like this myself many times over the years, where you'll see a child who's either come to your class a little bit upset or seems out of sorts or this sort of thing. Being able to, get access to that information in a quick and easy way, rather than doing that traditional staff all email, how's concern about it. That stuff takes such a long time to actually pull together. Having a system in place whereby you can quickly just check to see what's actually been going on gives you that context and enables you to go into that conversation far more well informed, so that you can support and help that child in a relevant way and make sure that you're able to give them support which is obviously going to be of best help to them as well.
It's a special birthday year for us. 30 years of award-winning school IT management solutions. Happy birthday, Netsupport Software.
And welcome back. So yeah, one of the things that we're talking about today is safeguarding and looking at the fresh approaches to safeguarding. I'll never forget that one of the things that I was always told is that for a parent, the most important thing for them is they know that when they leave their child at the school gate at the start of the day, they can pick them up at the end of the day and they are just as safe as they were when they left them. And that the safety of the child is everything. Now, obviously, with the context of safeguarding that we've spoken about so far, we've been looking very much within the four walls of the school and what happens during the school day. But actually, are there lessons that we can look at and best practice that we can share to then go back home? Mark, with the work that you've done with schools, what have you seen as some good examples of perhaps how schools can help parents when it comes to safeguarding and taking some of that best practice home?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, one of the first things you're taught as somebody trying to be a teacher is this whole idea around loco parentis. And so, you're there, which is, if you don't know, is Latin for in place of parent. And that's the key sort of responsibility of a teacher. But there are things that you know as a teacher, particularly those who engage in the sort of computing curriculum, but every teacher is aware of this. It's a requirement for every teacher to be trained around safeguarding every academic year. And there are plenty of things that we know as educators which really help us do what we do in terms of supporting strong digital citizenship and online safety and safeguarding and all that within the four walls of the school that are actually equally relevant to what parents want to do with their children at home themselves. And so some things that I've put in place myself and that lots of other schools do as well is using the resources that you have to help parents sort of navigate around these what are sometimes quite scary things. I have two children myself. Unfortunately, given my role, I'm on top of current trends and all of this. But Joe Blogg's parent on the street isn't going to know about the potential issues around Fortnite or other gaming platforms and what their child might be able to do online and how they can support that. I mean, certainly companies such as Apple have been working really hard recently, particularly with developments around things like screen time within iOS and what have you, to help support parents in their sort of work with their children about how they engage and use their technology. But things like digital parenting evenings are things that have been really, really popular in schools that I've worked in myself and schools I've supported since then. Taking on board that student voice as well, letting their parents actually know what they're interested in, what their thoughts are. For some parents, sharing the results of a student survey can be quite funny at times. Actually, some of the responses from children are often quite sort of full of comedy, but it actually sort of helps to draw home where children are actually at, because parents are often out of touch with sort of things that their children are actually doing. Some of the best things that have happened as well is having those sessions actually run by children, which is something I'm sure you're a huge advocate of with your work with e-cadets. But having those sessions provided parents with a real opportunity to learn about what actually is out there and to find out sort of strategies. And it's always really interesting. The student advice is often always the same as the advice that a professional would give. So sit down with your child and work out what the boundaries should be. It sounds like a revelation, but actually, these are things that come from children themselves as well. Yeah. Having those sort of conversations, working about what they think is suitable screen time, how much time they feel would be. I say to my own children, how long do you think you should get to spend on Minecraft? A day, a week, a month, and then also things like sharing the demographics back, sharing the actual statistics back about what it is that they're doing, and again, working with children and parents to sort of bring about those strategies that will help them. So if they do encounter something which is untoward. I mean, I was mentioning back before the break about the work that DNA can do in terms of keyword triggers and so forth and so on. But what do parents have at home to help and support with that sort of thing? They probably don't have anything to help and support with that. So what is it that parents can actually do to help and support around that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I mean, you'll remember as a child of the 80s, Henry, the whole Green Cross Code thing. We teach children to, you want children to be able to walk around and so forth and so on, but you teach them the Green Cross Code so they can cross the road safely.
Yeah.
We don't expect them to sort of wait for somebody to hold their hand and take them across the road forever. And the same is true with navigating online spaces, be it forums or chat rooms or messaging apps and so forth and so on. And so it's about working with those children and then also sort of talking with parents as well, often, again, getting the children to lead on this about what to do if a car is coming.
Yes,
or,
yeah.
That sort of thing, and having those open and frank conversations, and it goes back to, for me, one of the biggest things that can have an impact on child's learning is, according to Hattie, is relationships. Yeah. And having a good relationship with your child where you can have open conversations about things that are concerning them and worrying them and so forth and so on, that's where you can really make sure that your child is safe. And you can do that without any filtering.
Yes.
Because children will stumble across things. It's about giving them the strategies and skills and tools, having that toolkit, so they know what to do when something untowards happens.
Completely, and that's one of the things which I'm a massive advocate of and do at home as well. Sophia being 6.5, Rocco 2.5, but with Sophia we've always said, look, you can talk about anything and we will listen. And it can be difficult at times as a parent thinking, okay, if my child wants to talk about something, right, I have to put down the phone, I have to close the laptop, and I have to show them that I am properly engaged in what they're talking about. And that can be the small stuff over what the unicorn is currently being called and what she's playing with, because you know that if you show the interest in the small stuff, then she'll be more comfortable talking about the big stuff when that comes up.
It's interesting you mentioned the putting the phone down thing as well, actually, because something that I do with my children is I have screen time on myself. And so I limit things myself. And I think it's really important for parents and for school leaders as well. When we're thinking about, and we were talking about deploying ed tech and getting people using technology across the curriculum and all this sort of stuff. We want school leaders to model that sort of thing as well. But actually, I think it's our moral duty as parents to actually model good digital citizenship and awareness of our use of technology. We see so many parents, who I'll drive past cars on the motorway, the kids are in the back, plumbed into their iPads, all this sort of thing. Why not use that time, to actually think about, right, should we be using technology at this point in time? And I think it's the conversations that are the most important part.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think one of the earlier points you mentioned, talking about parents and what tools do they use at home. We'll put this in the notes for this particular podcast. But going back to the Almanac, which was produced with Netsupport and ourselves around BET, it's very interesting when you look at the statistics about just how few parents at home use broadband filtering. And as you say, kids will discover stuff anyway, but actually, you can help yourselves as parents by just plugging in some of the tools that you will already have from the broadband provider that's dialing into your house. So you can use those tools that are out there. But also, I think part of that wider debate around the lack of knowledge or the perceived lack of knowledge that parents have at times, where they feel that they're constantly trying to play catch up on what the latest app that's out there or the latest trend that's there. Now, yes, there is a disparity there where the information from kids coming home and the digital parent evenings can help with that. It also creates a void where you can then have panic, a moral panic that comes in. And we've seen it recently with a hoax that's been spread, and it's the same hoax that's been around before, and it comes around again because it's the same picture that's circulated. It could either be that it's now being used in WhatsApp, or it could be that it's used in Messenger. The tool changes, but the nature of the hoax stays the same. And the problem is that because there is that void at times where parents feel that concern, they can be swept away with the hype and the panicking that can come along. And I know, one of the big things that we always try and do is then educate schools on actually how to spot a hoax, but then actually to break that cycle. And one of the first things is that, the golden rule of a hoax is that you don't talk about the hoax, but you can use it as an opportunity to actually look at some wider engagement about, okay, well, this is how we can teach kids about fake news and how to spot when a story comes up.
I was going to ask anyway, you obviously do a whole range of work under the eCadets umbrella, supporting and empowering young people and students. How does that feed into the parental engagement and the approach that you take?
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. The early days for eCadets, people were saying, "Oh, will you write training materials for parents and give parents direct training materials?" And we took a decision where we said, actually, that's not something for us to create, because there are other organisations out there like Internet Matters that have great content that's signposted for parents. But actually, what we did do is we sat down with the teachers and with the kids and said, well, is there an opportunity, just as Mark said, where the children can deliver those messages home to the parents? So now what we do is we have the kids every term will create as one of their activities something that does go home that will teach parents on a bit of technology that they need to be aware of. Good example, around Christmas time, we look at phishing, because you see that a lot more purchases are done online. You might have older relatives that are using online shopping at a peak time for the Christmas period, so the kids are actually teaching them how to spot phishing emails that might come through, particularly like failed deliveries on Amazon, and then how that can lead to problems. So you're dealing with real issues that the parents could face, but the kids are the deliverers of that message. And it's really, again, it's helping to prepare and upskill the kids for the rest of their life. It's not just for that one activity, it's actually showing them that they can have the conversations back at home with parents and with grandparents about how they can be safe. And it's empowering every child then to know that that's the ability that they have.
And how does GoBubble fit into that broad arena of keeping young people safe?
I think going back to, as Mark said, with the Green Cross Code, and I as soon as you said that, I was getting flashbacks to my childhood, and Charlie Says, and all the messages that came out at the same time.
I'm too young for that, I don't remember.
For us, I mean, the analogy we always use is it's swimming. So, we teach people how to swim because, it's a strong life skill, because we know that water is a danger to us as humans. So for GoBubble, best way to use that analogy is that's the swimming pool. That's the environment that we've built, which is safe, that does have that, as with DNA and Netsupport tools, has that almost digital lifeguard there that's on duty, but it gives the arena and the opportunity then for kids to be able to experience something in an immersive and a fun way, but know that it's safe and protected. So they can experience everything at their own speed and their own pace. And they know that, if there's a problem that comes up, well, either it's not going to have appeared anyway, because the the filtering and AI that we have will stop it appearing. But even if it does appear and they've sent something through, we can then help to educate them. So, for example, if a child sends the poo emoji, they will get a message that says, we can't just send this straight away because it has the poo emoji. We just need to check on what that is. So we'll be then checking from the human side about the context of it. But then if a child tries to be a little bit clever and then sends the same message but says, well, actually the teacher is, and the poo emoji, well, then we're looking at the context and say, well, actually, no, that's definitely not allowed. And we'll be educating the child back onto that. So they get that learning opportunity at the same time as the fun of the social media.
So it is social media with stabilisers then, as you say?
It is social media with stabilisers. And the kids love it, and it's very much about that authentic student voice. I mean, we look at, during the beta testing, we had over 103,000 bubbles that were sent, and only 2 were flagged as red. And that's really testimony to the kids, because you find when you create an arena for them, they actually respect it a lot more and they use it in the appropriate way. And we've now had, again, going back to our earlier talks, where you then look at how teachers are using tech and how it's evolving through to the innovation stage. So we now have children who've created reading logs in an area called Bubble Books, where they're sharing their reading logs with kids around the world and actually recommending books to others that they've then picked up on. So we've had children in Canada recommending books to kids here in the UK that they've then gone on and read and then fed that back through to Canada as well. And it's wonderful when you see the kids actually picking up and using a tool in a safe and secure way, in that way, in terms of how it helps them and empower them.
Really good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Lee, for the chat today, guys. It's been brilliant to talk about what we're looking at with the fresh approaches to safeguarding, and again another fresh tool which I know Netsupport have is Really School, so we can now hear a little bit more about that. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Really School, a new way to capture, record and share students' learning experiences. You're listening to Netsupport Radio with Russell Prue, broadcasting on the Anderson Tiger Radio Network.